This is apropos. A court in Seoul is set to deliver its verdict on a high-stakes rebellion charge that could see former President Yoon Suk Yeol jailed for life or even banished to death row. The 65-year-old was impeached and removed from office over his disastrous bid to impose martial law in December 2024. Monty Francis has more.
Once embraced by world leaders, the ex-president of South Korea, Yoon Suk Yeol, now faces the ultimate punishment. A special counsel has asked a court in Seoul to sentence Yoon to death after he imposed martial law on the country in December of 2024. The state of martial law only lasted 6 hours because the South Korean National Assembly quickly voted it down and citizens flooded the streets in protest. Facing a huge public outcry, Yoon was later impeached, removed from office, and arrested, with prosecutors claiming he had conspired with military leaders to take over the legislature and to detain his political enemies, accusations he denies. In addition to insurrection charges, Yoon also faces criminal accusations of corruption, trading favors, and accusations he ordered drones to fly over North Korea to provoke Pyongyang as a pretext to declaring martial law. Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo was convicted last month for his role in the affair and sentenced to 23 years in prison. The ex-Interior Minister, Lee Sang-min, was sentenced to 7 years, and former spy chief Jo Tae-young is still on trial. Yoon's wife, the former First Lady, Kim Gang-hee, was recently sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison for accepting money and luxury gifts. As for Yoon, experts say even if he's sentenced to death, it's possible but unlikely that he'll be executed. He'll rather spend his life in prison, given that South Korea hasn't carried out an execution since 1997.
Well, for more on the case and what's at stake for South Korea, we're joined now by Youngmi Kim, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Asian Studies at the University of Edinburgh. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme this evening, Youngmi. Firstly, we should have the answer to this in a few hours' time, but at this point, how do you expect this verdict to go for the former president?
Many expect it would be either death penalty or life sentence, but if we see the history, it's quite questionable whether he would actually serve the entire duration.
Do you think that it's inevitable then that he will be handed down a life sentence, or is there a possibility here that he'll be given some form of leniency, even though he hasn't appeared to be contrite or made any apologies for what happened back in December 2024?
I mean, in another place, I actually mentioned he could have even pardoned from the next president, but I think what happened with the martial law is more serious than the old time of authoritarian time. So if he has less, sentence than life sentence, less duration, people would be enormously upset. Because in the end, it's the people who stop the martial law, not him. I mean, the lawyers, they are saying, it didn't last more than 3 hours and it was not actual martial law, it's just happening. But I don't think it's the case.
Yeah, is there any chance that the court might agree to some extent with his assertion and what his legal team argued, that this martial law decree was a lawful exercise of presidential authority? What do you make of what his defence team are arguing here?
I mean, there was a political deadlock for his entire political life as a president. That I do understand the frustration, but I don't think martial law was the answer to solve political deadlock at the National Assembly. And also it was not national crisis, it was rather his personal crisis, along with his wife's involvement with corruption case, and also the selection procedure of presidential, electoral candidates.
And, the fact that he hasn't made any kind of apologies, sticking to the story that he's had more or less from the beginning, do you expect any kind of change in approach? We're not expecting to hear from the former minister today, but given the gravity of these charges that he's facing and the potential sentence, particularly the death penalty that is on the cards potentially, Why do you think he hasn't been willing to show any kind of remorse? And do you expect a change in his demeanour?
Maybe it could be his leadership style. I mean, it's unlikely he would say he is not innocent. He's guilty of, his political action. Um, I think from his side, there was, facing large opposition in the parliament. It must be really stressful. And to a certain degree, they believe that his wife's corruption case was also framed. But there are other cases they were involved unlawfully, so many cases. So I think there's no excuse. It should be death penalty. It was never executed. I mean, it did not execute for the many decades in Korea. So it's likely to be life sentence, I think.
And Youngmi, this verdict, it's going to be very closely watched. It's going to be broadcast live to the nation in a few hours' time. Just talk to us a little bit about what the feeling is in South Korea currently about all of this. Is the verdict itself, no matter which way it falls, is it likely to be divisive?
Because of this event, not only because of that, but Korea does have political cleavage. And along with this case, this Yoon Suk Yeol's martial laws and the following up events, Korea was divided by elderly far-right people supporting him, and also some far-right young people were also supporting him, against his arrestment, etc. But in the end, the majority of people were very upset over what has happened. And entire nation does have historical trauma over dictatorship and massacre. So yes, there are some partial part people are divided, but majority of people would support, that he's guilty.
And what has the political fallout been for the People Power Party? Has it been able to distance itself from Yoon's legacy since that night in December 2024?
The very recent news, I remember one of politicians strongly supporting him, Yoon Suk Yeol, MP, said he regret what has happened. But still, the leader of People Power Party is still strongly supporting Yoon Suk Yeol. But there are some people not trying to have distance from Yoon Suk Yeol and his faction within People's Power's Party. I don't think they are winning in the coming election. I think their political position is getting weaker if they are staying in line with Yoon Suk Yeol.
And for ordinary people, Youngmi, has life been vastly or significantly different under Yoon's successor?
Ordinary people, I think they kind of moved on to support the current president. Current president has been quite good support, having really good support from the people over his reform policies, over property reform policies, and also the security market in South Korea has gone up really high. So I think majority of people, they moved on for to have a better life in South Korea, I think.
And as for the former president himself, this isn't the end of the road for him, no matter which way this verdict falls. He faces 8 separate trials, including a charge that his administration sent drones into North Korea to provoke a backlash and create the pretext for declaring military rule. When are we going to get some resolution in terms of all of those other cases? And of course, there are other legal proceedings pending against other members who were allegedly involved in that during that fateful night.
I think series of legal, court will continue for that. But it was not just, the case of martial law. He was provoking North Korea to have to initiate war. Therefore, they could have a legitimacy of national security, but it did not happen. So there will be a series of, lawsuits going on, not only for this case.
And
So
what,
as his wife, the former first lady as well.
and what next for the others that were allegedly involved? And there's over 24 people in total have been indicted over the martial law crisis.
You mean those supporter or not supporting people?
Well, some of the people who are alleged to have been involved, there's about 24 or so. There and these other various cases that are still pending.
I think, yeah, well, a lot of people who were involved for this coup, there will be, there'll be an ongoing lawsuit going on, and also a lot of people in the military. I remember government is trying to get rid of those people from the office, from their position, and some are fired, and they can't have pension anymore.
Youngmi, we'll have to leave it there for now. Thanks so much for your time on the programme. That is Youngmi Kim, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Asian Studies at the University of Edinburgh. Thank you.